The Arctic is changing rapidly, and that's why we are discussing its futures in plural. I should like to thank the International Polar Foundation, in particular its president Alain Hubert, for inviting me. Many of you in the audience know a lot more about the Arctic than I do. However, as a layman, I was struck last year by an advertisement in a newspaper for Arctic cruises. I found out that tour operators offer luxurious expeditions with icebreakers. One can get a 7-day polar bear experience, or choose, and I quote, the High Arctic and Northwest Passage, 14 days, 2 weeks, on a comfortable ship. I remember as a child reading about the famous Dutchman Willem Barents, the explorer who died in the late 16th century close to Spitsbergen, searching for the Northwest Passage. He and so many others chased the dream to find a shortcut between the Atlantic and the Pacific. Today, what a change. The legendary Northwest Passage is now open in August. And thanks to icebreakers, people can watch polar bears whilst wearing sunglasses, sitting on their deck chairs. At least if one would believe these brochures. For me, the image of the Arctic tourists shows as clearly as any official document how fundamentally the future of Arctic is changing. Fortunately, old-style adventurers still exist. President Alain Hubert of the International Polar Foundation impressed me earlier this week, on an evening, with his stories, his book about his crossing of the Arctic in 2007. A man of science and a man of action. Without any doubt, many of you here today share this mindset. However, the classic adventurer now exists next to this typical product of our democratic mass consumption societies, the tourist. Climate change is clearly at work here. The rise of global temperature. According to the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, the Arctic temperatures rose between 3 degrees and 3.5 degrees since 1970. This has significant effects on the environment. You know all about this. The melting of glaciers and ice sheets, coastal erosion, threats to indigenous species like the polar bear and other fauna and flora, the melting of the permafrost, which potentially liberates billions of tons of methane and other gases now covered by it, a phenomenon which some scientists call a ticking time bomb. These issues are of global importance and they should be of global concern. The mysterious white world of ice and snow will soon no longer be as it was. One can ask, not literally, of course, but in a manner of speaking, how long the North Pole continue to direct our compass. The Arctic Future Symposium here in Brussels is an excellent occasion to improve knowledge, to confront ideas, and most of all, to understand that the future of the Arctic is also the future of the civilization on this planet. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, what can we do? For one thing, we should do the maximum against the underlying cause, climate change. The European Union is very active in this field, as you know. We are the only region in the world with binding climate legislation. For 2020, we will reduce our emissions with 20% compared to 1990. This is over five times more ambitious than the United States target for 2020. Legislation there is still lacking. Incidentally, our ambition is very often under the impulse from our Nordic members, in particular Denmark and Sweden. The climate conference in Copenhagen was a good sign of the Danish and European ambition, with Sweden as president at that time of the European Union in the driver's seat. Of course, the European Union has been disappointed by the end result of Copenhagen. Other major global actors were not willing to commit in a comparable extent to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. A legal global framework was not reached, although we were ready. However, with the Copenhagen Accord, we struck at the right balance between support and action, between rights and duties. And we must continue the work on this basis. We need a constructive spirit on the road to the next climate conference in Cancun and also beyond Cancun. The climate is too important to be left in the hands of the disillusioned. However, even with all the climate change efforts in the world, even when we succeed in the goal of restricting the rise in global temperature to 2% on average in 2050, the issue of today will not go away. There is no back to normalcy for the North Pole. We have to find new ways and means to deal with the Arctic future. And that's why I should like to say how much I appreciate the constructive approach of this conference. Dialogue is key in addressing the challenges of the polar region. We all know, however, that not only dialogue is at work. One has noticed in recent years how the change in natural circumstances results in a new geostrategic perception of the region. There was talk of a gold rush of the north. There were competing national expeditions highlighting territorial claims. Border conflicts, which were frozen and therefore largely forgotten, are literally warming up, giving rise to disputes which need to be resolved in international law. The recent initial agreement between Russia and Norway concerning their 40-year-old dispute about the borderline of the Barents and the Arctic Ocean is a hopeful sign. Moreover, nations and business may be tempted by the vast reserves of mainly offshore gas and oil, or by prospect of more accessible metals, timber, and other natural resources. The melting of the Arctic Sea may change not only international shipping routes, but the economic balance of the whole region. This may disrupt many of the fragile ecological and societal balances. Ladies and gentlemen, a spirit of economic and political competition will not serve the future of the Arctic. I think we need the spirit of dialogue, a scientific dialogue between experts to examine the changing situation on the ground, and a political dialogue between all the stakeholders, the states, communities, and political authorities that play a role in the region. In this dialogue, the European Union is fully willing to play its role. Amongst the 8 members of the Arctic Council, 3 are European Union member states: Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. A 4th is an EU accession country, Iceland. A 5th is part of the shared European Economic Area, Norway. And the 3 others are strategic partners of the European Union, Canada, Russia, and the United States. Since 2008, the European Union has been developing an Arctic policy. This is solidly based on 3 clear principles: to protect and preserve the Arctic in unison with its population, to promote the sustainable use of natural resources, and third priority, to contribute to enhanced multilateral governance in the Arctic. These 3 principles, proposed by the European Commission, have been agreed by the Council representing the 27 governments, and I'm hopeful they will also be reflected in the forthcoming Arctic report of the European Parliament. These 3 principles can also be identified in many, if not all, of the numerous Arctic strategies and policy documents that Arctic and non-Arctic states have issued. European Union and other Arctic stakeholders approach the Arctic with a similar mindset. And that is good. We have every reason to cooperate closely in order to protect and to use this wonderful area of the world in a sustainable and reasonable way. Even if the first comprehensive approach dates from 2008, the European Union's involvement on Arctic issues is not new. We have been involved through different sectoral policies. In view of today's conference, I would like to point to the field of Arctic research. Over the years, the Union itself has contributed with more than 200 million in a wide range of areas. Substantial support to Arctic observation during International Polar Year 2007-2008 is an example. Another example is the Union's contribution to projects on the impact of climate change on human health in the Arctic. EU member states such as Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, France, Poland, Spain and Italy have for many years been dedicating substantial human and financial resources to Arctic research. As regards Arctic multilateral governance, the European Union has repeatedly underlined the applicability of the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea and of other relevant international agreements applicable to the Arctic region. And as I mentioned, the vast areas of the Arctic region belong to sovereign countries, which are either EU members or belong to the EU's closest partners. In order to better work together, the European Union feels it would be useful to be a neutral observer in the Arctic Council. Mutual trust and international coordination are key. We favour a further development of the body of international law. The European Union is also very much open to dialogue on all issues with the indigenous populations of the region. And we are very proud of our EU citizens who are an Arctic indigenous people, the Sami. Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, to conclude, the Arctic can have many different futures. The future will not be only determined by the blind fortune of natural forces such as climate change. No, our human world, including the polar world, is made by man. It is shaped by our free acts and decisions of today and of tomorrow. The future of the Arctic can go one way or another, depending on our acts. Its future can be coal black, or ash grey, or maybe, after all, snow white. It is up to us to assume our responsibility and to shape the fate of this extraordinary region of our planet. I thank all of you for your contributions to this common effort, and I sincerely hope we can continue to do this in the spirit of dialogue and of cooperation. Thank you.